Welcome to Eye on the Illini. This is Mike Kegley here with Kedrick Prince and Matt Stevens. We are talking today about the extensions that were received by Brad Underwood and Bret Bielema, big contract extensions. And I know, Ked, your time is limited due to a lot of things going on around up there in your life athletically. Let's talk a little bit to kind of kick this off, Ked. You're out there with recruits and you're calling recruits and talking to recruits and their parents. What do long-term contract extensions like this mean for the Illini coaches when they're out on the recruiting trail?
It means a lot because I'll tell you, some schools, not in a negative way all the time, but some schools will use that against you, especially saying, hey, why would you want to go to Illinois? There's rumors that the coach won't be there. There's no backing. There's no support. So from that standpoint alone, and I know the coaches, Illinois coaches could use it and say, hey, they're committed. They expect a lot of me. They know what we can do, and they've shown, that we can win games. And, I don't have all the details in front of me. Like I said, I've been a real busy man, but I think I saw something today, Matt, and I don't want to put you on the spot because I don't like that done to me, but I saw something today where Illinois made the biggest jump in attendance or something like that, or there was something. If I can find it before I get up there, I like to read it to you guys, but it was something where how he has made a significant jump with the program versus wins and losses compared to where it's been. And Illinois football is relevant. Brad Underwood is a guy that, came into a program that was it was teetering. It was teetering from going to one of the best in the country to one of the worst. He's resurrected it, and he's kept it going. And so, if you're Josh Whitman, you want to keep the best coaches you have. I know that's probably going to happen to some of the other ones at some point in time. But having said that, I just really think it's smart. You can use that as a recruiting tool. Other coaches cannot use that against you right now.
Yeah, and that's something that, again, you just don't – that's part of the dollars and cents that are out there that they don't add up, which is what are you going to do, when you have your coaches being attacked. And I think probably the best example of that, and Ked, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Ron Zook could recruit anybody. He could recruit anyone. But when his contract wasn't extended, it was kind of ironic that the one thing that Ron Zook did better than anyone else was recruit. And when he didn't have that 4-year rolling extension, the University of Illinois actually took away his number one asset by allowing him to be attacked then by coaches who probably weren't as good of recruiters as Zook. Now, you notice I didn't say anything about his ability to actually coach a team once they got here. But in terms of getting kids here, he was fantastic. And I do think that you saw a dip when he didn't have the backing of the school behind him.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And people may look at it in a negative way, but it's not that. To me, I don't see it that way. If you can gain an advantage to get a recruit by saying, hey, I can't promise you if you go to Illinois that coach is going to be there. And some kids do. And I think this is true in Bret Bielema's and Brad Underwood's case. Some kids do go to Illinois because of the coaches. Some go because they could be one and done now, which we can say. Bret Bielema, I think I know I'm getting old, but I think he has 55 guys in the NFL. Brad Underwood is putting guys in the NBA. So all those things that used to go against Illinois, you can't. Now, you talk about Ron Zook. The recruiting right now is like what it was when Ron Zook was there, to be honest with you. You've got some high-profile kids. You got kids that are 4-star recruits that you are typically beating out schools like Michigan and Oregon. Before, occasionally you had some kids. But now, you look at the roster of kids in the 20, 25, and 26 class, they're going toe-to-toe with some of those kids. That didn't happen. And when Zook was there, you saw more of that than what you have before. Like when Lovie Smith was there, Lovie was a good talent evaluator, but he didn't bring in a lot of 4-star kids or kids that, you had to go to get to compete against Ohio State or to compete against Iowa or Wisconsin. Illinois typically lost those kids because they constantly were recruiting max school programs. Now I don't think that's the case. Is Bret Bielema on Ohio State or Oregon level? No, but he's recruiting some of those kids.
Yeah, and I will say I will pick a little bit of a nit here with you, Ken. Bret Bielema has done a fantastic job, and I would take him as my head coach over Ron Zook 7 days a week and maybe even 8 days a week. But you had Aurelius Ben and Martez Wilson and some super duper 5-stars come this way, and I only could dream of when you take a look at what Bret Bielema does with 0 stars and 1 stars and 2 stars. I could only dream what he would do if he got a Martez and a Aurelius Ben on top of all the other talent that he somehow develops.
So here's the flip side of that. So, okay, now let's look at, I don't know, this kid hasn't panned out. And I mean, I don't want to say he hasn't panned out. It's a bad choice of words. I want to use that example because people think that I'm going to be critical of the kid. But look at the roster today. And I don't know how good they're going to be. I couldn't tell you. But is it the Bierman kid? Is that the linebacker?
Yeah.
Who did Illinois beat out to get that kid?
He's coming this year. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Who's the receiver right now that Matt and I constantly, we kind of take jabs at each other? Illinois beat out Michigan to get that kid. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. I'm not saying that those kids aren't great players, but if you look, I'm having a brain cramp of the receiver who's on the team this year.
Malik Elzy.
Yeah, Malik Elzy. Let's go back, and I'll do it while I'm on the air right here, and let's look at his list of schools. Aurelius Ben was special. Brandon Lloyd and all those schools. Brandon Lloyd was there when Ron Turner was there. Those kids were good. Don't get me wrong. But before Bret Bielema got there, they were not even in the ballpark with those kids. That's what I'm saying.
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that.
So they didn't even have a chance because every time you looked at the list, and I know because I was talking to the kids, who else is recruiting you? Western Michigan, Miami of Ohio.
Tim Beckman was getting guys who were being recruited to other high schools.
Yes. So that's what I'm saying to you. The recruiting is better. And fact is, like it or not, I know I'm right. Bret Bielema put 55 guys in the NFL. And granted, some of those guys in recent years, they were recruits of Lovie Smith, but as they say in old school, he quote unquote coached them up. But I think the recruiting on paper has gotten better. Illinois never, ever. I mean, I live in the Quad Cities, and Iowa is king in football, and they will always, you see a recruit, if Illinois had a kid, they didn't have a chance. Matthew Bailey wouldn't, granted, they didn't offer him a scholarship, but if Iowa would have offered Matthew Bailey a scholarship, he probably would have went there, and they didn't do it. So Everybody went to Iowa. Everybody, or if they had Wisconsin on their list, Illinois didn't have a chance. That's the part that I'm saying is changing. So having a guy who can put guys in the NFL, guys want to play for him, he has a proven track record, he is winning some of those recruiting battles. No program, I don't care how good you are, they're not winning all of them. Iowa's not winning all those recruiting battles. Tom Kakert is a friend of mine, and we've had a conversation 3 weeks ago. Some of the coaches they're not concerned or scared, but now they have another program to compete against in the Midwest because Illinois didn't matter before. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yep. Matt, any thoughts on the effect that this will have on recruiting? I know that's not your area that you focus on, but nonetheless, if you're reporting on college sports, you're going to get bumping into recruiting.
Sure. Two schools of thought here. One is that I do think Illinois is making a significant financial, commitment to Bret Bielema. We should word this properly. This is now the third contract that Bret Bielema has got. I have literally no idea why the University of Illinois calls this a contract extension. They are taking Bret Bielema's deal and they are ripping it up, and they are now giving him a new 7-year deal. Because his new starting salary in 2025 is almost $1.5 million more than it would have been based off of the old deal. Um, they're extending the time that Bret Bielema is guaranteed to be at Illinois, but this is now the third different contract that Bret Bielema has been given at the University of Illinois. He got a new deal after 2022, and then obviously the original deal when he was hired in December of 2020. I only make that point because this is the old deal now has nothing to do with the new one in my eyes. We have no details as to this, but I mean, they're making a significant financial commitment. If his starting salary is now $7.7 million for 2025, we're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of Bret Bielema's guaranteed. I'm doing bar napkin math here based off of what the increases were yearly in the old deal. We're somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 million commitment to Bret Bielema in this new deal. The reason that's significant is that gets Illinois, at least salary-wise for its head coach, competitive to what, that level and that tier is in the league. He basically has the same average salary if you go by 2024 as Luke Fickell has at Wisconsin. And if you're in that tier, Illinois, can't say, hey, we don't pay our coaches as much as, Kirk gets at Iowa, Luke Fickell gets at Wisconsin, Jed Fish gets at Washington, all that kind of stuff in our league. The second school of thought, though, is that we're now into 2025. And when we talk about recruiting, we're talking about what? We're talking about salary for players. And that is a detail I do not know in this deal as to what commitment Illinois has made in terms of salary for players. And I don't know how that will get affected by the commitment that this deal gives to Bret Bielema. But I find it kind of interesting that Illinois has, I guess behind the scenes told me, and I don't know if they've told Ked the same thing, but that we are tapped on what we can spend on our roster for 2025. I was told that before the, post spring portal opened up. That's why you didn't see a whole bunch of, activity for Illinois in the post spring portal in terms of big names, in terms of big dollars being thrown around. And I wonder if that will change going forward with this new deal. If you're going to commit you're essentially committing now 6 years of Bret Bielema. You're married now if you're Josh Whitman and your DIA for at least 7 years with Bret Bielema. So does that mean, hey, I'm going to make a significant financial commitment to your pay for play situation? Does that happen going forward? How much more of the I don't mean to create this, but if I've been given no indication that Illinois is not going to pay the full rev share of whatever it is, $21 million. They're going to pay the full of if you're in the SEC or you're in the Big Ten, you damn well better. And they know that. But how much more of that is Illinois going to go over the top of compared to what other schools are prepared to do? I don't know what that deal says. I don't know what kind of, buyout information is going to be on this deal. I know that it was really significant for anybody to hire away Bret Bielema at this point. And they put that language in there in 2023 after 2022 in the new deal that happened right before media days in 2023 that prohibited a Big Ten school from hiring Bret Bielema, except they didn't put any financial information as to what that penalty would be if, say, I don't know, Iowa wanted to hire Bret Bielema later on in life. I've never gotten a good answer to that question as to why there isn't a financial number to that, but I'm damn curious to know if that language is still in this contract, because we now have a new deal that's completely written up on what the buyout numbers are, how the financial, payout structure is. There's a signing bonus to this thing that I've never heard of before in any contract I've ever covered, where Bret Bielema literally wants 11 a.m. on March 22nd or May 22nd, when this deal is approved by the BOT, Bret Bielema will get a sizable chunk of money in his bank account for simply signing the deal. All of that is in that deal. I don't know what the specifics are yet. So I would love to know what specifically the financial commitment Illinois is making to Bret Bielema's program going forward. Otherwise, I do think programs can still use the idea that Illinois is shopping in the discount barn in terms of recruiting. And But if they're not, I think Illinois needs to get it out there that, hey, we have made this kind of significant financial commitment to Bret Bielema's ability to go get players.
Yeah, and I gotta be honest with you. I look at this from a couple different angles in terms of what and why they're doing what they're doing. Bielema's 28 wins in his first 4 seasons is among the best in Illinois history. Remember, Illinois is not Ohio State. And basically, I think the only person better through the first 50 games was Mike White in the 80s, and he was 30, 19-1 versus Bret being 20, 28, and 22. So, pretty good for.
Is that because Makovic didn't get to 50 games?
That could be the reason, but but Makovic came into a much different situation than Bielema did.
Sure.
Makovic came into Jeff George ready to go, and
sure.
although Makovic is certainly a good coach, I'm not trying to.
No, I didn't know how long John was there for. The other difference, obviously, Mike, is that John was his own boss. He was also the AD at Illinois at the time when he was also
for a portion of that,
yeah.
And I do think that the average attendance since Bret Bielema has come from 21 to 24 has increased 19,403 per game, which is number 1 in the nation in total growth and number 9 in percentage growth. And the upward trend is expected, this year, with obviously expectations being so high. And when you look at right now, the recruiting class is one of the best in program history. It's ranked 11, the 2026 class. Now, there's a lot of ways to go on that one, but I do think when you look at what Illinois is doing in football, and again, folks, unlike a lot of people who like to come on and have their own show and talk about everything they're right on, I was clearly wrong on Bret Bielema. I was not excited about him as a coach. It took me about 3 months and getting a chance to meet him to understand, like, whoa, this guy is going to be something different. So as I watch Bielema, I think what he has done at Illinois has been nothing short of, I don't know if miracle is the right word, but semi-miracle. This is a team that was a laughingstock, the lowest winning percentage in the Big Ten. Ron Gunther flushed the football program down the toilet, except for an occasional year or two. And he damn near destroyed the Fighting Illini football program. And then Mike Thomas said, hey, hold my beer, and went out and did worse. So when you look at Josh Whitman, even the miss that was Lovie Smith, I think was a worthwhile risk. Got no problem with it whatsoever. So I had no issues. I have no issues with that. To me, it's like, again, I think Bielema is, and this is wrong thing to say, but I think he's worth his weight in gold. And that comes from a guy who's pushing 250. So, I'm right up there with Bret. But the fact of the matter is this, he has transformed. And I think there's a two-pronged approach here that I don't know that Josh Whitman would even say this if he was doing it, but there's a perception now that Illinois is a big deal. This extension got big press on ESPN. It got big press throughout all the sports, websites today. This is a big deal. Illinois sports matters. If Illinois would have done this, 6 years ago, maybe it doesn't even make it in the notes section of a one of those websites. So they've turned on the juice.
Sorry to cut you off, Mike, but that's my point. What you just said answered your own question. They're relevant. You just said it because nobody cared about Illinois basketball. Nobody cared about Illinois football before those two coaches got there. Bret Bielema has done that. We were talking, and I apologize for cutting you off. I'm going to throw two names out there to you. We were talking about the recruits. Andre Lovelet is a kid from Blue Eyes and Eisenhower.
Yep.
Okay, tell me, is Tennessee a pretty good football program? Yes, they are. Is Missouri, I know Illinois fans don't want to hear that, a pretty good football program? Yes, they are. My point to all this is that those are the kind of schools that they are now beating out to go get some of these kids to get at Illinois. That's why this matters. This is why it's a big deal, because Bret Bielema got that big deal on, and ESPN and all the other national networks made a big deal out of it, because at the end of the day, they are competitive. They won 10 games last year. And I'm going to tell you what, I think what helps Illinois, Bret Bielema is really smart and clever on social media as well. So he's out there. You look at I don't want to say his, I don't want to butcher his name right. Jashawn Newton. Here's a kid that turned down Florida State or Miami or Louisville to play football to Illinois. But people are going to look and question what I'm saying. Mississippi State, that they're not beating out those people. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. Do you think that happened before he got there? Because I don't remember seeing that. You saw Lovie Smith get one or two of those guys, but for the most part, you didn't get it. That's what I'm trying to say. The program's headed in the right direction. They are not Ohio State. They are not Georgia, but they're not the bottom feeder of the Big Ten anymore. That's my point and what I'm trying to say. Because if you can go beat out Miami, Florida, who we knew at one time was the top dog, or Florida State, or Michigan, or Penn State. That's the point. That's what you have to look at. Because at some point, if you continue to win games, that's going to be the norm. You're not going to win every one of them, but I'll tell you what. Let's look at Bret Underwood. Tell me a kid that he can't go get. Will Riley is possibly going to be a first-round draft pick, and they beat out, 5 or 6 of the top 12 teams in the country to get him. It does matter.
Yeah, no, I'm not. Like I said, I think that perception shows that Illinois wants to play with the big boys when you do that. But I think there's a second thing. I think Josh Whitman, again, I don't know if he would say this. Maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. But I think there was a lesson learned. Ron Gunther patted himself on the back for underpaying Bill Self for years. He was always like, he's the eighth highest paid guy, but first in wins in the Big Ten. I'm a great AD.
There it is.
What an idiot. And Bill Self, after hearing that speech 3 years in a row, got up and left.
Right.
Well, with Bret Bielema, I'm not saying that, Iowa's not going to go after him, but they're going to have to sharpen their pencil and make sure they've been depositing a lot of money if you're going to go get Bret Bielema. And that was the thing I always hated about Bill Self is Illinois didn't make it hard for him to leave. I'm not saying that guys won't leave a school. I understand that. I'm not naive. But if you pay them well and treat them with respect, it's harder for them to decide they want to go somewhere else.
Yeah, what I would say is, again, you said it right, Cagley. There's a twofold approach to this, two-pronged approach to this, essentially. I think one is that if you're an Illini fan today, you would prefer that Josh Whitman and the administration make it look like it's a gamble. What they're doing is a gamble. You would prefer that they gamble this way, which is to say, like, let's essentially what I think some people would say, let's overpay our guys to make sure that what we're doing now is at least, what we think is what we're doing now is sustainable, right? In the idea of paying Bret Bielema $7.7 million for 2025, okay? And there are a lot of Illini football fans out there right now that are like, hey, look, man, 2024 was great, but you got to do it again before I'm on board. There's still those people out there. And don't tell me that they're not, because there are.
Oh, there's
right?
plenty, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So you are gambling that 2025 is going to be another successful football season, but you would rather make that gamble than to tell Bret Bielema, even privately, you got to do it again before we're going to pay you. But before we're going to make this investment in you. You don't want that out there, that Illinois is not willing to make an investment in a coach, even let's say early, right? And I do think there are a lot of people that are going to look at this and say that it's early. I don't agree with that, because I do think that it's market value. But I think if you wanted to make that argument, I think Illinois is willing to make the investment and willing to make this type of gamble, because the other gamble is, yes, Bret Bielema decides he wants to go somewhere else. Bret Bielema would rather be an offensive coordinator in the NFL, or Bret Bielema would rather go somewhere else. The guy with a Hawkeye tattoo on his left calf would rather be in Iowa City. And I don't care what the language in my contract says. I'd rather be there now. And I'm going to make that very, very well known to my agent, who, gets what he wants. So, and the other side of this is that, look, Bret Bielema is like the 19th highest paid coach in college football, or top 20 highest paid coach in college football. And my argument to everybody who's an Illini fan is, it's not your money. None of that dollars and cents is your money. So what do you care, right? So I think Illinois is making the investment in Bret Bielema. What I think Illinois needs to do is recognize, what I'm only saying is I think Illinois, the next step here, or the step that should have been congruent with this, is if you're going to make the investment in Bret Bielema, okay, now make the investment in your salary for your roster. Because
and I'm not certain we can say that hasn't been done yet, because icon for the Illini, I even read some national in the Athletic talked about, how important they were in terms of raising dollars and helping Bret Bielema target certain players to return, and kept a lot of talent
about
in the
retention
door
all the time. Yeah. They talk
and
about player retention all the time.
Yeah. And I think that is one of the things I think that's underrated is Bret Bielema. Again, this goes down to the guy he just thinks ahead of, the days of the chucklehead football coach. Those days are gone. You got to be a business manager. You got to understand an awful lot of things. And Bret Bielema was on the cutting edge of getting guys to stay before it became a thing. When Johnny Newton came back, people were like, what? They had the law firm back, think about how bad that year would have been without the law firm.
Bad.
Oh my goodness.
Trust me, bad.
Yeah. And
it would have been fourth quarter against Wisconsin bad when Johnny got ejected. That was how bad it was.
And Bret knew that long before it happened. That's my point.
Correct.
And so when I look at what he's doing is nothing short of miraculous, because he, in my mind, is on a trajectory changing this program every bit as much as Mike White did. And because they were a laughing stock when Mike White got here, and Illinois was a laughing stock when Bret Bielema showed up, and both those men turned it around.
Well, and on top of
this that can't be ignored is that Bret Bielema is 55 years old, fellas. Like if this contract goes all the way to 2035, he'll be 65 years old. There's a really, really good chance when we'll talk about this with Underwood too, 61 today. And he got a potentially 10-year deal and a guaranteed 7-year deal. We're talking about the two head coaches in the two most important sports on your campus, football and then men's basketball, that these guys could be retiring as the Illini head coach. And that's on the table now, because if you're talking about Bret Bielema coaching until he's 65, that's about retirement age, and if not sooner, especially with the way that this sport's headed on a constant 365, 24/7 type of basis. And men's basketball is no different. And Underwood's 61 today. So you've basically put a contract in front of Brad Underwood that puts him all the way up until about 70 years old. So I think what Josh Whitman, from a legacy standpoint, if you want to look at it from that standpoint too, is he's guaranteed the two most important coaches on his campus are probably going to retire in the jobs that they have, barring a major shock surprise over the next few years.
Yep.
I'll say this though. One thing that about what Matt just said, when Bill Self was at Illinois, I never heard him say, I don't want to go anywhere else. This is home. When Brad Underwood got hired, he made that really clear. He didn't want to go anywhere. And I'm going to tell you, I know Bret Bielema has that Hawkeye tattoo on his foot or his ankle, but I'm going to tell you, I know firsthand how good he is and passionate he is about the University of Illinois. This guy, this may be trivial and small to some people, but every time Bret Bielema gives an interview, I don't care if it's ABC or Big Ten Network, you got the ILL going with him. They want to be here. They want to retire here. But this is Brad Underwood's dream job. Never heard Bret Bielema say that, but Josh Whitman gave him a new chance at life. And because when he went to Arkansas, and people are still saying the same negative things because it just didn't go as well as it is going for him right now. So what? Whatever. He has put this program in good faith. Also, and I'll tell you guys, I think you're both right. I think I saw most people think they're going to be good this year. But then I saw some guy on Twitter make a good point. I hope it doesn't come true. Illinois won a lot of close games last year. They won 10 games, but go back to the Purdue game and look what it took to win that game. A missed catch here, a fumble here, you lose that game. So I see why people are saying, hey, Matt, you're right. Let me see if you're going to do that again this year. Because for the most part, people think their schedule is easy. I don't. I know what's on the schedule. Ohio State, I don't care if it's at home or if it's in their back pocket. That's not going to be easy. So that's just one game, however, and USC is really good. So these teams are going to – Illinois is not going to go out there now and think, well, you know what, we can sneak up on people. They should be ranked in everybody's top 15. People are going to want to beat them. So those days are going to be done. They don't, granted, they have a great quarterback, 18 out of 22 players, 16 out of 22 players coming back. But things that they did last year, so I think things fell right for them, as I guess is what I'm saying. And next year, things are going to have to fall right, but at the same time, people are not going to just say, well, it's Illinois, and you know what, it's going to be a guaranteed win. I think the scouting is going to be a little bit different. I think people are going to want to beat them. I think the game is going to matter on whether it's a home or away on people's schedules, because they are going to be good.
Yeah, I mean, look, bottom line is when you have a 10-2, 10-3 season, things did break your way. I think the bottom line is this Illinois team's going to come in with a significant strength in the offensive line. They're going to have a lot of returning players at key positions where Bret Bielema feels you need them. I think this team is capable of winning 10 games again, but I do think people are underestimating just how tough the Big Ten is. I mean, when you start putting all these W's in, like it's automatic, there's only 2 teams in the Big Ten that I start putting W's down the line, and that's Penn State and Ohio State. And even Oregon, has to watch out occasionally, although they had a great year last year too. So to me, when people start W'ing the whole thing, but Illinois has an opportunity. I think they could win anywhere from 8 to 11 games next year. But this is not a gimme schedule. And I don't think Bret Bielema is sitting in his office going, well, we're going to win this one, we're going to win that one. That's just not his personality. And that's part of the reason why his teams win so many games, I think.
Yeah, and to put a bow on this, I think there's two major issues here. One is that I think the Marlboro Man in Bloomington, Indiana, has changed the dynamic for everything. I think the guy Cignetti basically, told everybody that's in Illinois' tier it's possible to do what we did if you're willing to make an investment in the sport. And by God, everybody in Bloomington, Indiana, made an investment in Hoosier football. And then Cignetti goes out and gets them into the college football playoff. And what did they do? They paid Kurt Cignetti like a load amount of money. So that guy did a number on what's possible if you're in this new Big Ten. And I totally
agree with that.
And I think Illinois has to recognize that if you can do something like that, then the dynamic of what financially you can do from a football standpoint changes immediately, because it is changing hourly in Bloomington, Indiana, from what it was before. And I think that's the other part of it is, guys, is that you guys are mentioning programs. If we're going to talk about this from a collective standpoint, like, I don't think anybody but Oregon can really boast about having this much continuity in the 2 most important sports on their campus in terms of their head coach. When you talk about what Oregon's able to basically, I think Oregon is, got a guy in Dan Lanning that they believe is not going to go anywhere. They think that he's poach proof in a sense. I've heard that in Eugene with what they've been able to commit to him and what the program's able to do and what Phil Knight's able to do in the state to help them out. But then you've got a guy in Dana Altman who's been there for a while now at Oregon too, who has a lot of success. I don't think there's any kind of continued continuity in the league other than Oregon that Illinois really has to look at and go, like, if we can keep Brad Underwood and Bret Bielema here, then our 2 most important coaches from a continuity and a productivity standpoint can't be matched. And I think that also is something that Josh Whitman from a legacy standpoint can look at and go, I made sure that happened. Our administration made sure that happened. And from that standpoint, again, when I say that Illinois fans would probably like for Josh Whitman to make that bet, I mean, from our standpoint, guys, like, I don't know if we're going to be covering a coaching search here anytime soon in the two big boys based off of what they did tonight. And I think that that's significant in a sense of, I mean, I push back on a lot of the relevancy stuff that Ked's talking about because they haven't made the significant jump that Ked was talking about yet. They could, but they haven't yet. But if you continue to have continuity like this and you continue to have productivity like this, I mean, it's a byproduct of stability, is a byproduct of, continually doing the right things over and over and over again. And in this regard, in this dynamic of where we are in 2025, I don't think Josh Whitman wants to do high-profile coaching searches anymore. Like those are really, really stressful for administrations, and his batting average isn't that great in them particularly. So like or that's not perfect in it particularly, and so I think being able to keep the guy you have that, if what Illinois is doing right now is they're saying, hey, what we've done in these two sports over the last, I would say, half decade, if we can continue to replicate that, then that's what this is worth financially. And I don't know if 100% of Illini fans would agree with that, but it's better than making the other gamble, which is like, well, we're going to wait to do this because we want to make sure that we're really, really great, and then we'll pay you, and then at that point you lose your guy. And at that point, the program has no more stability anymore. And I would rather, and like looking at it from an Illini fan's perspective, I would rather them make the gamble of, we like where we are with Bret Bielema, we like where we are with Brett Underwood. Let's pay them and make sure that, like, at the very, very least, the floor of our program is where we've been the last few years. And if that's the case, then Illini fans have the stability that they've been looking for probably the last decade and a half.
And then we look at Underwood, and he's got a big personality. So there are people who react, they don't, sometimes people react strongly to him, positively or negatively. But I look at what he's done, and Ked mentioned it. I mean, Illini basketball was a disaster under John Gross in the last few years of Weber. Underwood's turned it around. And a lot of times I see him getting hit with a lot of the stuff that I heard about Lou Henson when I was a young person. Is everybody's like, well, Lou Henson's not that great a coach. Well, Lou Henson should have won more games. And then when you look back on what the Illinois had in the 80s, and they didn't have Sonny Vaccaro throwing big players to them like other big schools had. Illinois had to go fight and scratch to get what they got, and he put together great teams. And again, you can look at polls, and there's a couple places that have called the Flying Illini the best team never to win a title. You looked at some snake bit moments that they had, and then you look at I really thought he was hitting his recruiting zenith when Bruce Pearl lied and Bobby Knight and Digger Phelps made sure that he got on probation. So I think Lou Henson could have won that elusive national title had we been in a universe where you didn't have scumbags like Bruce Pearl lying and trying to get their career. Basically, he made sure that Lou Henson never got a national title. If you think I feel strongly about it, well, Lou lived the rest of his life without one. Didn't make him less of a person, but guys like Jim Boeheim got one, and I would take Lou Henson over Jim Boeheim about 17 times. And a guy like Bruce Pearl, I don't care if he never wins at Auburn, because he took that away. He can apologize all he wants. He took that away from Lou Henson, the opportunity to win a national title, and he did it by lying and making stuff up. And guys like Deion Thomas have had to listen to that for his career, and people thinking that he's a cheating, person, et cetera. And we all know Deion couldn't be further from the truth. So bottom line is I heard those things about Henson's weaknesses, and Underwood's there's going to be parts of the fan base who don't like the head coach, and Underwood's going to take some of that. Now, the other thing is I would encourage people to go take a look at Dean Smith's record and how many years it took him to win a national title. And then I'd tell you to go take a look at John Wooden and see how many years he was pretty much a 500 coach until Sam Gilbert got attached to the UCLA program. And then Mr. Pyramid of Values became a great coach. So, again, I look at this and I say, Brad Underwood, I have no issues. I'm not saying either of these guys are perfect. Anybody can get better. But I think these are two coaches that are doing a fantastic job for the University of Illinois. And if Josh Whitman wants to put his chips in their corner for another 5 to 10 years, it's hard for me to find a reason to not want to do that, Ked.
If you look at this show, we probably spent 70% of it talking about Illinois football. And the reason I'm saying that is because I'm not saying we are, but we are taking Brad Underwood for granted because we know how good he's been and he's proven it. No matter what happens, you're never going to make everybody happy. You just can't. Like right now, a lot of people are upset because there's so many European players on this roster. They don't like it. But he wins games. And Matt just said that he turned 61 years old today. How many coaches, and I've coached, and I'm stubborn, I'm not 61, I don't know if I could just, and I think I'm a flexible guy, I don't know if I would change my whole philosophy the way he has. He's done it so many times. That's why for him, can't speak to Bret because he's not been there and hasn't won as much as Brad, but that's what makes Brad special. I saw a podcast where a lot of national guys were talking about Brad Underwood because of his ability to do that. He'll do it. And look at the way the roster was 2 years ago and look at it today. It's totally different. And for me, I struggle with it. But then I talked to a couple NBA guys and they were like, Kedrick, okay, you can get mad all you want and struggle with it, but that's the way the NBA game is played. You look at last week, a week and a half ago, Boston Celtics shot, 40, 50 three-pointers? Illinois fans, people cringed when they saw that happen. But that's the way the game is being played. And guess who's ahead of the curve? Brad Underwood, because the game is going to be changed that way. Now I'm following recruiting, and I'm seeing schools like Michigan, Indiana starting to go overseas. Who set that trend? Brad Underwood was the first guy who grasped the transfer portal. Oh, I don't want to do this. A lot of schools balked at it. He didn't. So whether you like him or not, we can get mad because everybody's going to get mad. Brad Underwood was a Kansas City Chiefs fan, and I guarantee that if you had a conversation with him one-on-one, he will sit and tell you, well, he doesn't agree with everything that they do either. But you don't have to make it personal with people. That's just the way it is. But at the end of the day, I don't think Josh Whitman would have gave him a contract or Bret Bielema if he wasn't confident in them and the program was being headed in the right direction. And Matt, I agree with you. When you can lock down two coaches like this, it says a lot about the program and what he thinks about them and their future and them being able to be successful coaches at Illinois.
Can I make a quick point that I'd love to get you two guys' thoughts on? Because
go ahead.
Here's what we deal with at Illini, guys. I know a lot. Okay. We do, especially after losses, specifically basketball losses, but sometimes a lot of football losses too, okay? Here's what we deal with. We get a lot of people that go on the message boards and say what? Well, Brad's got to change or Bielema's got to change. Can we just put the link of this contract story up every time that happens and go, because I'd love to get you guys to understand, because I look at this and I agree with Kedrick. I think it's been pretty clear that I agree that what has happened tonight is necessary for both of these sports to continue to have the kind of, stability that you need to get things done in those two most important sports. Bar none, I'm for this, right? But ain't nobody telling Bret Bielema and Brad Underwood what to do for the next 6 years. I hope everybody understands that. Because if Brad Underwood wants to do this, they're doing it. And guess what? Ain't nobody going to tell you what to do. Nobody. If Bret Bielema wants to run the ball 55 times in a game, guess what? Son of a gun's going to run the ball 55 times in a game. And if you don't like it, everybody who has a boss in their real world is going to go, well, Bret Bielema has a boss. Yeah, and he can go to his boss and go, if you don't like what I'm doing, pay me all the monies, and I'll go away. I just don't think ain't nobody at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign is telling these two gentlemen what to do for the better part of the next 6 years. And everybody's got to get used to that.
They've earned that right, though. They've earned that right.
No, I'm not saying they have.
Yeah.
But everybody's got to get hip to the fact if you're an Illini fan now, you're married to these two people. Like, and it ain't nothing going to change. Ain't nothing and nobody going to change in those two buildings now. Because that's what stability brings, like, in terms of coaching contracts. But I think that would only be the crux of what's like, if Illinois gets beat like they got beat at Madison Square Garden against Duke, and everybody wants to go ape shit nuts about, like, hey, like, you know, Brad's got to change, or we got to stop, like Ked pointed out, like, we got to stop shooting 30, 43s a game. You know what? If Brad Underwood wants to have him pop 43s a game now for the next 6 years, guess what? Illinois is going to be shooting 43s for the next 6 years, because ain't nobody going to tell him what to do, because Illinois doesn't have the resources to pay the buyout that's going to happen for Bret Bielema and Brad Underwood. So I just want everybody to understand, when you make a significant financial commitment to a coach, this is the other side of that too. So you're banking on the backslide not happening. And if the backslide doesn't happen, perfect, great. But if, like, the 2024-2025 basketball season happens where they make the round of 32 and that's it, and you're competing for a title, and Illinois fans have said, hey, we're not totally on board with that being the ceiling of the program, I get that. But if that's the median average of what you get over the next 6 years, that's what this is worth. Like, it's worth paying Brad Underwood $4.5 to $5 million a year to get in the round of 62 every year. That's what cost of doing business is. That's price of the brick now, folks. And when you make that commitment to Brad Underwood, guess what? Brad Underwood gets to run the program however he damn well sees and damn well fits Brad Underwood. Like, he damn well sees it. Like, and everybody's going to have to get hip to that. Otherwise, like, you going like, hey, like, Kettle nod his head on this one. The great Aaron Henry debate of 2023, where Bret Bielema needed to go get a new defensive coordinator. I promise you, Bret Bielema was going to hire whoever the hell he wants to hire now, and he was going to do it anyway before. But he's going to look at this piece of paper and go, that's his trump card, folks. And if you don't like it, there's the door. Like, and I do think both of those guys have a personality like, hey, we want you on board, but I'm going to do it my way now, because guess what? I've got the paper that says I can. And I think that's what Illinois has needed, but I also think that's going to be a point of contention if things get rocky here.
Mike, if you don't mind, can I make a comment to St. Dominic's Rosemary? He was asking Matt, but I would really like to comment.
Go ahead.
So, Matt, he's asking, what has Brad Underwood done in 8 years? St. Dominic, I have no idea how old you are. I don't. But I'm going to tell you, one of my most disliked memories of covering the University of Illinois was under John Gross. It is no secret that I have had close relationships with the staff Bill Self had, Bruce Weber, this current staff. That staff was under John Gross. Didn't talk to him, didn't care. Not that that matters to what you're saying. Okay, thanks. You're 52 years old, so we're close. I just know this, buddy. I know every chance that their selection Sunday, Illinois they're going to be called. I know going into every season, the last 5 seasons, Illinois is going to be considered one of the top 2 or 3 or 4 teams in the Big Ten, just like they are right now. They are putting guys in the NBA. What I see, and Matt can speak on it himself. I know the question was directed at Matt. Everybody wants to win a national title. Look how long it took Matt Painter to get it done. Brad Underwood, I mean, let's not take for granted. They were in the Final 8 2 years ago, and they lost to the best team in the country, the team that won it all. If Illinois didn't have to play them, and they did, and the if and buts, I understand that, they probably would have been in the Final 4. So to say the Final 8, to me, the Final 8 was huge. I think that was great. I mean, Illinois got a lot of exposure. It helped with recruiting. Before he got there, that was never going to happen. I'm not saying that if you brought Mike Krzyzewski in, that they're not going to have a chance to go to the Final 4. But I know this. I know Brad Underwood is told, I've heard him say it, that that's his goal. Everybody's goal is to get to the Final 4, and he's putting together a roster to do it. I mean, look at the Andre Stojakovic kid. That kid could have went anywhere. He really could have. He could have went to any top program in the country. Will Riley could have went anywhere in the country. That's what I was saying about Illinois football. You can't take that stuff for granted, because you're going to have a guy or 2 guys who are possibly going to be all Big Ten players. Because you know what I do in my time when I should be sleeping? I look on other people's message boards, and the day Andre committed, If you would have seen the message boards at Indiana and Purdue and Michigan, they were pissed. You know why they were pissed? Because now they have another guy that they have to deal with at Illinois, like a Will Riley, a Cus Bears, or Terrence Shannon. At least that's my perspective. Matt has his own perspective. I just can't sit and say that this guy is not worth the money because they are competitive. And I can assure you right now, when the preseason polls come out, they're going to be there again. To me, yeah, I cover them and you know what? I know what we do, but it's depressing when I see people pick the polls and they don't pick Illinois there or they don't put Bret Bielema's team there. I don't see that happening right now, at least with the football program. So that's kind of the way I see it. It could be worse. They could have not been able to get Andre. They lost on a kid named Josh Dix. What if you miss on both of those? Then you do that for 2 or 3 years in a row? I understand that, but that's not happening right now. They're getting kids. They're turning kids away. Everybody in the world knows that I liked AJ Storr. I thought he'd be a great piece. And that kid, I think Kansas ruined him. Sorry, Kansas fan and Bill Self fans. But that kid is talented, and Illinois didn't want anything to do with him. That tells you what the state of the program is and where they are.
Brett, Mike, do you understand what I'm saying, though? Is that like it seems to me like as of May 13th, as of the evening of May 13th, 2025, both Bret Bielema and Brad Underwood have kissed my ass tenure and kissed my ass money. If you have a critique,
I don't think it'll change. I don't think it'll change them, though, Matt.
Okay.
Because I don't think Brett Bielema, you know, you get and meet him, and both these guys are nice guys,
right.
okay?
Right.
But you get and meet them, they know what they want to do,
right.
and they keep to it. They don't really care about the side chatter. I don't even think, I got to be honest with you, you know, if they watch us or talk about us, it isn't very often. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, Bret Bielema doesn't care what the media thinks or the fans. What he worries about, and I look, I've known guys like this and their successful personalities, is he worries about those 12 Saturdays getting the win one at a time. And beyond that, I mean, that's the genius of being a great coach is, you know, that's what Nick Saban did. He just worried about those 12 Saturdays. And what am I going to do to win on those 12 Saturdays? And I don't think Bret Bielema cares. And I do think the other thing I do think that's really interesting is I think he picks up from people he's around. And I think that time in the NFL, I think he learned a ton and he has applied that to what he's done at University of Illinois. And I think he had the self-awareness to say, okay, you know what? I did a pretty darn good job at Wisconsin, had a rougher time at Arkansas. What can I do to get better? And I think he took things that he perceived had value and he brings them to Illinois. And again, you guys know I was not much for the hire when he got hired. And then as you watched how he went about his job before even the first season, it's like, okay, this guy's different than what Illinois had in that chair, probably since John Makovic walked out of here. Because, right. I mean, when you deal with Bret, he goes like this and scratches his nose. You're almost like, well, there's probably a checklist that said to do that at, 53 minutes into the podcast. He's supposed to scratch his nose with his right hand. And I think that a planning and the way he works things, and again, Bret's not going to run. I mean, he's going to have fun. He's not going to take everything super seriously, but I'm telling you, he figured out the transfer portal and the fact that Illinois didn't have the money of Ohio State. So how are we going to use our money to best suit our team for success? He was getting people to stay before the rest of the country did. Go ahead and look at it. I will challenge anybody.
Right. Yeah.
Go ahead and look at roster
they
management.
Sell retention. You're right. They sell retention better than anybody in the country.
But he did it first is the part I'm talking about on top of it all. And so you can't tell me, like I said, the days of the chucklehead football coaches, those guys are dead unless you're lucky enough to be at Ohio State, where the boosters and the fans have for over 100 years done whatever is necessary to keep that team on top.
And there's
a reason why Ohio State's had 2 losing seasons in 70.
Right. So here's the last part I'll mention too, is that I do think for the most part, I think there's some debate on the basketball side, but I mean, look, I think some of the hires that Underwood's made are really impressive too. I think Jeff Alexander is a hell of a coach. I think bringing O back has transformed this thing in the way that people couldn't even have imagined, right? And then I think one of the best things that Bret Bielema does is hire coaches. I think it's one of the best things about him as having him as a head coach. So if you're telling me that Bret Bielema is going to be here for 7 years, like guaranteed, like let's make that assumption. Look, Barry Lunny wants to be a head coach. I'm sure Aaron Henry wants to be a head coach. I think Terrence Jamison would make a hell of a head coach somewhere eventually. I think he's one of the best, defensive line coaches in the country. My point, Mike, is that I think coaches like Justin Stepp, for instance, run to Bret Bielema because they want to get better. Like they run to his staff, they want to get better. If you're telling me that Bret Bielema is going to be here for the better part of at least 7 years, maybe even a decade, like you're looking. If you look at it from like the agents and the coaches that I talk to, at these coaches association stuff that I go to, you don't think it's attractive that Bret Bielema has a commitment from Illinois that he's going to be here for the better part of a decade? Like they're going to run and go, okay, yeah, well, if that means if Bret's going to be there, then I'm going to be there. Like then I've got some stability with my situation, and I can learn. And and I think one of the best things that Bret does is hire coaches. Like he hired Aaron Henry, and he stuck with Aaron Henry. God help him. He stuck with Aaron, and it worked, right? It's worked out great. He's stuck with Terrence Jamison, even in recruiting misses in Chicago, and now it's starting to flip a little bit. I think that's great. He made the Barry Lunny hire and then made the Tony Peterson fire the way he did, and it's worked out great. Like hiring coaches is what Bret Bielema does well, and I think giving him stability to do that even further emphasizes that I think Illinois is going to be an attractive spot for assistants to want to go to.
Well, Bret has demonstrated something as a guy who wrote a book on how to hire people back in the 90s. Yes. Bret has demonstrated the ability to understand what he needs in a player for the offense and the defense that he runs. Mm-hmm. And that sounds like it's no big deal, but you want to know who's the best ever at doing that? Bill Belichick.
Yep.
Bill Belichick can go into
Belichick guy, right?
He can go into the free agency and say, you know what, that guy that nobody else wants, he has the skill sets and the body type to do what I need a blank linebacker, defensive end, whatever to do. And Bret Bielema is able to walk out onto a high school field and watch this kid and say, you know what, for my free safeties, I need that guy. And then that guy is that guy, and he develops them, trains them. And I think he is a advantage for Illinois. And if Bret is here for 10 more years, I think the Illinois football program will be meaningfully transformed, and it will be at the place that Wisconsin football used to be or better. And I just believe that, and we'll see. I can be proven wrong, and facts are facts. Now, in terms of somebody else was writing on here that, Bruce Weber. Bruce Weber is one of the nicest guys you could ever meet. He is a kind man. He was so cool. He spent a few minutes watching my AAU team when he didn't have to, because there was nobody on my team that was ever going to play college basketball at a high level. Totally class individual. But, he had national championship and fired after 9 years. Brad Underwood has won Elite Eight in 8 years. But, and that's an analysis that's true. But it's a analysis that talks about some facts. It's the truth, but not the whole truth. Weber took over a stacked roster, and to his credit, did a better job, in my non-humble opinion. He did a better job with Dee and Darren than Bill Self would have. Now, Bill Self would have also recruited another player or two to help, so maybe it wouldn't have been as important. But he did a better job coaching that Dee and Darren team than Bill would have done, in my opinion. But when it came to recruiting and keeping the program at a high level, Weber started here and went down progressively. Underwood took over a blender of vomit and brought it up, and it's going up. So, you can say, like I said, Underwood had two of the roughest seasons because he had to get through the crap and there was no transfer portal to make it instantaneous.
Right.
But I would say I will take Underwood over Weber, even though Weber is a super nice guy, based on the fact that Underwood had to build the program from scratch and use his recruits to get it better. Look, Weber went 37-2 and had arguably the greatest season in Illinois basketball. He will forever be appreciated for that. He is certainly, when he went to Kansas State, he is a good coach. If Weber would have stayed at SIU, there would be no SIU arena. There would be a Bruce Weber arena. He would have been, he would have dominated at that level for 25 years. Unfortunately, he either didn't choose to use the resource, didn't have the resources, or just didn't have the charisma to attract the best players. I knew, and I posted on another site because we didn't exist. I posted the day that after the year after the national title game, when it was the spring recruiting time and Illinois got nothing, I said, it's time to fire Bruce Weber. And everybody was like, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about." And I said, "Look, he's a good guy, but we're going to see it. We're going to see a death of 1,000 cuts over years because the talent level is going to take 3 or 4 years to dissolve." And it's unfortunate because if he had a lead recruiter, holy cow! And sometimes I think if you had Bruce Weber sitting as a senior advisor to Brad Underwood, oh my gosh, what a duo that would be. But Weber, like I said, I'll take Brad Underwood over Weber. I'm sorry, people can, and I don't mind if you disagree with me. That's perfectly fine because I can't prove it any more than somebody who disagrees with me can.
Sure, right.
But you have to. Josh Whitman has done the exact right thing. Doesn't mean it's going to work. Sometimes you do the right thing and it doesn't work. But Josh Whitman has done the exact right thing. You've got two guys who have elevated the programs after taking over crap and turned it into something better, and you have to go with them, period.
So that's the question I was going to ask. Maybe we end with, from a business perspective, Mike, and I'll throw it to you because I think you're more apt to answer this than even maybe I am. I guess I would rather, if I was an Illini fan, prefer that Josh Whitman administration make the bet early on my guy, like that I have now. It's kind of the bird in the hand kind of theory. Yep. I'd rather make the early bet on the guy that I have in my building, in on my campus, than go through the instability of trying to find a new guy and starting from scratch. That's not crazy, especially even in 2025, right? Like betting on the stability of Brad Underwood and Bret Bielema in 2025 seems like a better bet than trying to figuring if they leave, I'll just go find another Bret Bielema or a Brad Underwood. That doesn't seem to work nearly as well, around the country than taking care of your own and keeping the stability of the guys you have.
Well, look, stability is one thing,
right?
You don't want this to, there's no reason you would retain Tim Beckman because he sucked.
No, and that's
when you have. I know, but I'm
ailments,
using that.
right?
I'm using that because the example is you've got two guys who've brought home the bacon for Illinois, and the question, it's twofold. The question that I would ask anybody who wants to argue against what Josh Whitman did, first one is who are you going to get that's better? I can tell you right now that 25 years ago, people who followed college basketball, they knew that Bill Self was a freaking slam dunk. They knew that Billy Donovan was a freaking slam dunk. Right now, you look out onto that field, there may be a Billy Donovan and a Bill Self, but they have not raised themselves up to the level that that's money. So, and anytime you move a guy up, remember when Monson went from Gonzaga, Few was his assistant coach, went to Minnesota and face flopped. Everybody went, whoa, I thought he was going to be great. Well, turned out he wasn't. And so there's no such thing as a guarantee. You look at Licklider, who did good at Butler, brought a boatload of coaches behind him, Brad Stevens, Thad Matta, John Gross, went to Iowa and was Iowa's worst nightmare. So there's no guarantee that the up and comer is going to be great, but I don't think there's anybody
Right.
that reminds me of Self or Donovan at the same stage of their
Right.
careers. So you're going to tell me you're
Right.
going to roll, you're going to find some guy and roll the dice and pray he's as good as Brad Underwood. Josh Whitman he is not dumb. And the same thing with
Right.
Bret Bielema. There's some young, good football coaches, but you're going to take a guy. Again, both these guys have taken Illinois at some of their lowest points and elevated them. You have to go with them. Then the second part of this is really important. Illinois knows they're going to have to be smart with their money.
Right.
So Jerry Jones has consistently waited too long to sign guys to contract. He waited on Dak and extended him for 2 years and then had to pay him an ungodly huge contract. Then he waited on it and extended him for an ungodly time. And he's doing the same thing with Micah Parsons right now. He's gonna wait and sign Micah Parsons. He could have signed a deal a year and a half ago that's right here, but he's gonna wait that year and a half and pay this much. I don't care how much the salary cap goes up. He's killing his own salary cap.
And
so
a year and a half ago,
Illinois,
people still would have said that's too much to pay for Micah Parsons, but in a year and a half, it's not. Right?
Exactly.
Like, you know what I mean?
Exactly. So let's just roll. Let's go Fantasy Island here, folks. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but let's just go Fantasy Island here. Let's say Bret Bielema takes the Illini to a national title this year in the CFP, and Brad Underwood
just gets to the CFP. How about that? Like,
yeah,
do that.
Let's just have more fun. Let's have more fun as Illini fans.
Fine.
Bret Bielema,
sure, whatever.
He wins the national title, and Brad Underwood wins the national title. Now you're not extending these guys for 7 and 4 million. You're extending these guys for 10 and 8. And Illinois only has a finite amount of money. So Josh Whitman is making the smart play. You got two sure things. Pay them today. People can go, oh, it's too much money. But if they kick ass, you're going to be going, wow, what a great deal Josh Whitman got. And again, it's no big deal at Ohio State when they've got more money than God and their boosters line up to write checks, et cetera. Illinois doesn't have the population that Columbus has. Illinois doesn't have 100 years of history. So that's that. And then if Bruce Weber had NIL like Brad Underwood, it's a different story. Look, Illinois had boosters to get players there. Okay. So that NIL argument is a joke.
Bruce they have them Weber, now. So they clearly had them back then, right?
They had the boosters. Bill Self had a roster. That roster was supported. So
yes, it was.
Weber either chose not to tap into it. The people who had the money decided not to spend it on Bruce Weber, or a combination of the two. But the fact of the matter is you get wins and what's going on. Weber took a great club and he maximized the D and Darren team, but he wasn't able to attract talent. We can make a bunch of excuses as to why it was, it's okay, but he just didn't do it. I like the man. This is not about an anti-Bruce Weber. And is Brad Underwood perfect? No. And people, the more success you have, the more you are going to be under pressure. Right now, I mean, I can go on to Purdue boards right now, and they think Matt Painter is not the right guy, and that Purdue needs to get rid of him because he can't win the big game. That is stupid. Matt Painter is a fantastic coach. So I think any fan base, when they don't win the national title, gets mad. And
so what I would ask you is that if here's what I think, and this is an I think. This is not an I know or that I feel. This is an I think, folks. I think the two most impressive things, and Mike, you can tell me something else if you think it is, but I think the two most important and impressive things that Josh Whitman has done as an AD at Illinois is that one day he got off the plane at Willard Airport with Brad Underwood, and everybody nationally went, "Holy crap! How did Illinois pull that off?" Right? And that was a big deal. And then in one December afternoon in State College, Pennsylvania, he got off the plane with Bret Bielema, and everybody kind of went, "Wow, I wonder how Illinois pulled that off. I thought they were going to hire Lance Leipold." Like, you know what I mean?
And I don't think that's even fair, because I think there was a bunch of people who said, "Well, boy, he should have got Leipold." I think he got Bielema.
Well, what I mean is that I think Illinois was in the market for a MAC coach, and they got a 3-time Big Ten champ, like 3-time.
I'm with you.
Right. And I'm just saying, if you're Josh Whitman, if those are the two most important and impressive things you've done as an AD, or at least the most impressive and high profile important things you've done as an AD, it's not actually out of the question that Whitman doesn't think he can replicate that again. And then in one day, and if we want to go even further back, further down the list of sports, there was one afternoon he got off the plane with Shauna Green.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, but if I'm Josh Whitman, I don't know if I want to try and replicate that feat again.
Look, you don't,
because
and
that can.
The other part is, take a look at what he's done, and some of this could be luck because I don't think you could predict the transfer portal NIL world. But Illinois had Ubben and the Smith Center, so Illinois has fantastic facilities that they now don't have to pay for while trying to figure out how to pay players. Genius move,
right?
Did he know everything going in? No, but sometimes it's better to be a little bit of lucky than good, and he's going to make mistakes by being aggressive. So he was aggressive, got Ubben and Smith Center ready, and now it's paying off massive dividends. Those are the things that you get. And again, I look at what he's done. Like, for instance, with Mike Small, it's it's just golf. So what's he do? They get involved and bring Adkins up to the point where they can host an NCAA tournament because he's got the best golf coach in the country. These are the things that nobody writes about Josh Whitman. That Josh Whitman is way ahead. I come from the business world, okay? So not to slight anybody, but there's a lot of people who cover the Illini who are just they're good fans and they can write well. I'm not arguing, but they never been in the business world. You don't really understand what Bret Bielema is doing when he starts going to, I'm going to retain people instead of go try to throw money against Ohio State for new people. And they don't understand that when Josh Whitman's doing these things that later on look like big wins, because they've never been in the business world. They never had to try to anticipate trends and be there ahead of time. And I'm telling you, I feel like when you have Josh Whitman and then you throw in Bret Bielema, Brad Underwood, Shauna Green, Mike Small, you're talking about a brain trust there of people who understand their sport. They are good at they have the charisma necessary to recruit people, and they have what can be, if too much becomes a weakness, but they have the strength of believing in themselves and believing that they can find a way to overcome obstacles. And again, we'll see how it plays out. This is Illinois. They are not going to have the resources that Ryan Day will. And again, I'll wrap up with this. If you give me, if you switch Ryan Day and Bret Bielema has more than one national title at Ohio State with the talent that Ryan Day's got. And Ryan Day has never won double digits if he's the head coach of Illinois, period.
Well, I mean, I would say, Mike, here's the thing. If you're an Illini fan and you're in the Champaign County area, okay, go drive about an hour and a half over to West Lafayette, Indiana, and sit down with Mike Babinski and ask him how this works. Because there are times in which, and everybody knows what I think of Ryan Walters as a defensive coordinator, but what I'm about to say is Josh Whitman has come off the plane with Brad Underwood and Bret Bielema, and he doesn't want to do that anymore. I'm in his head going, man, I don't want to do that anymore. I'd rather just bank on the guys I have. Because Mike Babinski knows sometimes you can come off the plane with Jeff Brom, and sometimes you can come off the plane with Ryan Walters. And one is awesome, and the other is oh my God, I think I have to completely rebuild the athletic department because our football program's in the toilet. And Josh Whitman specifically understands sometimes you can come off the plane with Lovie Smith, which I was on board with at the time. And in previous administrations, you can come off the plane with Tim Beckman, or sometimes you come off the plane with Bret Bielema, and boy, I don't want to do another coaching search again. I got too much stuff to worry about, with pay for play and all the other stuff I got to fund right now, right? I don't want to do a coaching search. That sounds horrible. And so I think the one thing that Illinois and Josh Whitman has kind of banked on themselves with, at least from a guaranteed standpoint. And look, we understand, Mike, we both get, if Illinois goes to a Final Four or Illinois goes to the CFP, we're ripping that contract up again, and we're doing a new one. That's how this industry works. Trust me, folks.
And look,
that happening. Guess what? Illinois has guaranteed itself that the very, 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 very good coaches that we have are still going to be here, or guaranteed to be here for a very, very long time. And I think I talked about legacy with Josh Whitman. If that's his legacy at Illinois, it's a pretty damn good one, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, no, I get it, and I'll wrap this episode with a couple quick thoughts. One is Lovie Smith was an important hire. It didn't work out, but the logic behind why he was hired, the resume that he had, made him a viable and legitimate candidate, and made, it didn't turn out right, but Whitman got, he had the guts to also pull the trigger and stop it.
It's what they're doing in Chapel Hill right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, we'll find out. We'll find out, but you certainly he did. I thought he had I thought Lovie Smith was going to do better than he did. He didn't. And I do think that if I feel pretty good that Whitman's on quite a roll with coaches. If he has to hire somebody, he'll be fine. And ultimately, it's something that will, it's something that you'll see he's good at what he does, but why put yourself under the pressure to come up with a second Bret Bielema or a second Brad Underwood if you got him? And then ultimately we will find out, it's a very, the toughest thing about the coaching business is these guys are in a situation where only one team wins the title every year. So, that means that the other 294 Division I football or basketball teams, they're 300, whatever it is, they're all losers. And one guy walks away with the national title. And again, some of it goes down to who gets the best players. And I feel like at least with this group of coaches, they're going to get the talent that fits what they want to do. And then we will see how they do. And look, until you win the big one, you're always going to have those questions. And I'll go back to anybody who's young, go into Google and look at Dean Smith, one of the great basketball coaches of all time. Look how long it took him to win a national title. And the only reason he won his first national title is because a freshman threw a ball to Michael Jordan for no apparent reason. And Michael went down and hit that possession. They went down. I think it was Jordan who got the steal. But had Georgetown had a normal possession and the freshman hadn't panicked, Dean Smith would have been yet another choke artist for another few years until he won the title again. And so you don't win till you don't. And Lou Henson wasn't fortunate enough, because when he did finally build the program to that level, it got taken away from him. And so if Illinois basketball doesn't make the NCAA tournament next season, is Brad on the hot seat with this contract? I would say no. And then the other thing is Brad is now second, I think, only to Lou Henson on consecutive NCAA tournaments. So I'm going to tell you right now, if I have to bet, I'm betting that first off, he's not going to be on the hot seat if he doesn't make it. But I like the bet that he's going to go to the NCAA tournament quite easily.
And that's the bet that Josh Whitman's making as of tonight with these two men. Is that the median bar is our floor, right? The median bar of going to a bowl or going to the NCAA tournament is our floor with these two guys. That's the bet he's making tonight.
Yeah,
it's a pretty good one.
I can't think of, looking at past history, it looks like a good bet. And Illinois football has probably more to prove to the general fan, because they haven't been good. Not Bret Bielema's fault, not Luke Altmaier's fault, but over the last 30 years, it's been a rough road. And so the fans have a lot of scars. And Illinois basketball has been significantly better. And Underwood's trying to bring it back to where it was. And obviously the peak years were the end of the 80s with Lou Henson, I guess 84 to 89, 90. And then you had that high period from probably, where Self had a pretty good group that he inherited. And then he brought in a lot of good pieces to strengthen it. And then Bruce Weber got Self's guys. So there was probably a 6-year period, 99 to 2005, that the basketball program, that's what Underwood's trying to replicate. We'll see. I mean, it's not easy to go up against that level of accomplishment, but Illinois hasn't won the big title, and they're going to have to see if they're the guys who can do it. And that's
All I
pretty much
know is
where we are now.
all I know is I think I don't have to cover a coaching search for quite a while, and thank God, because
I think it's a good thing. So we are going way long, folks. We don't want to keep you guys, but thanks for tuning in. And of course, you can get to IlliniGuys.com, 27 cents a day. Subscribe there. We'd love to have you. The message boards are the big thing, because then you can argue with us, like in this in the feed here, but you can do it every day, 24/7. And Brad, Ked, Matt, myself, Larry, we're all here. Steve Sturm, the rest of them. It's always fun to have that interplay. So until next time, folks, go Illini.